How you doing, guys and gals, and welcome back to episode 2 of our Map Making 101 series here on Tabletop Tantrums with me, Big Guy. Today, we're going to talk about patterns and brushes. Two really important tools that you're going to need if you're going to create a map. Now, what that allows you to do is allows you to add colors. The patterns allow you to add colors relatively easy without too much trouble. But it also gives you a chance to make a pattern or a color that's not too hard on the printer, but also allows you to differentiate between walls and solid pieces and so on and so forth. And the brushes are very important because it allows you to differentiate between solid walls, secret walls, half walls, and different things like that, which is what all we're going to go over today. Now, I do apologize. The last video did not come out very well, and it was kind of blurry. So I went around and switched all the settings around, and we should be able to see it a lot better this time and read it and not be blurry words. So I do apologize for that. But this is the first time I'm doing a big tutorial with looking at my screen. So at least we fixed it. That's the important part. So today we're going to talk about patterns and brushes, as we said. So I've created another tutorial file, as you can see up in here. It says tutorial number 2, but we're not going to start with that. And if you don't know exactly what's going on, go back and watch the first video. The playlist should be in the description. Just go back and watch the first video and you can follow right along with us. Today we're going to start with a new file. Now again, sticking with the pixels, not what you could actually read this time. Pixels, and you can actually read the number. We're going to go with, again, let's do 64 by 64. Now this is just for a pattern, so it doesn't have to be too crazy. And this is what we can see here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this. Now, this is for the solid pieces for our map. Like if we have columns or things that the characters or players cannot pass through. Because there's a big difference between a crate that I could jump over, or the player can jump over, versus a column from the floor to the ceiling that they cannot. You know, a big difference. So that's what we're going to create. And when you do this, you have to bear in mind that you're going to be creating different types of maps. Maps that are in town, maps that are in caves, maps that are on space stations, whatever, what have you, depending on what genre and game system you are using. So just a handful of generic ones will really be all you need. Now, as you can see, I've already made a few over here, right above the webcam right there. I've already made a few, but I'm going to make a few with you to show you how I did. So what happens is you get a little block, just a 64 by 64. Now, this is good, it's important. See, I didn't do that on mine here. I'm going to use the ones we make here on these videos. Because I did them 20 by 20 just so I didn't have, I didn't know exactly what's going on. But I've since then learned that if you do it 64 by 64, it's tileable with the actual blocks and grid that we make. So it'll look a lot better. So what we're going to need is a couple basic ones. We're going to probably need a grass one, or one that represents grass, one that represents solid rock, or a movable object or something like that. And we're going to need one that represents water. Those are the three basic ones that you need most of the time. So let's get started. So what we're going to do is start out, let's do stone first. Now, these do not have to be fancy. These do not have to be overly graphically amazing. They just have to symbolize that it's a solid thing that the players cannot pass. So it doesn't overly matter, because doing an actual big old huge rock texture with cracks in it and everything is going to look silly patterned over 50 million times. Let alone the fact it'll be very hard on your printer if you decide to print these out. Because the way I make maps and the way I'm showing you on these series here is the fact of I'm allowing you to, they're not quite fully finished because I don't know what your game's going to be like. I don't know if you're going to want a door on this room or if you're going to want the door to be blown off or bashed through or have a crate in the way, a big pile of stuff in the way so they can't even use the door. We leave it open so that way you can either print it out or bring it back into a program like GIMP here and add those things later, which I will show you later in the series of these map making tutorials. So we don't have to get too complicated. Keeping it simple, especially for this, and the work and the amount of ink for the printer is a good idea. So we need something that looks like stone. So we don't want to do full black because then you'll run through your ink in a heartbeat. Now, but having a nice gray is a good idea. Okay, so what I'm doing here, this is the color selector right here. You just click on these boxes here and this will pop up. You have a choice. You could either pick these already done colors or you can move around this little crosshair inside the colors and get a wide variety of colors. Now, there's always a white over in the far right corner and always a black in the far top left corner. If you want a gray, go across the bottom and just kind of go in a little bit. It's a nice light gray. It shouldn't be too hard on the printer. Just hit OK. And for this, we're going to go ahead and do a new layer. I don't usually like putting anything directly onto the background layer just in case. So we're going to call this Rock 1. Just in case we need more than one layer, we can still have it. Make sure we're on this layer here. Get your fill tool like that. Make sure, let's pull this out a little bit here. Make sure we're on full foreground color fill. And then fill it up. First part. Now, if you want to keep it that simple where it's just a solid color, go for it. You could stop right there and skip to the next chunk of the video. I like to add a little bit of color to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our paintbrush tool. We're going to pick a brush. And you can see we got all kinds of brushes. So we're going to go for one of these gnarly looking ones here. Like that. And down here's the size. 20 is okay. But we're going to pick a different color. Now I want to go for a little bit lighter so there's just a little bit of contrast, a little bit of shine to the rock. Just hit OK. Now you have a couple choices. You can just go and go nuts. You could lightly put it in. This is where your creativity comes in. Like this. And then you'd have to undo them all to get rid of them. Like this. Now, so Control Z is what I was using to get rid of them. And you could actually see that right here. See this undo history? See, that's where it's at. It shows you all the steps you took and all the things you undid. I like leave it on layers most of the time. So let's do like a couple dots right on the edge, like this. Make a couple little lighter than the other ones. Maybe dot them around, and let's do a couple streaks in it like that. Maybe put some more lighter spots in it, like this. And again, this is all up to your imagination, really. So that way we have a little bit of a varied texture of a color, because it almost looks textured now. Now we could also, if we want to get real fancy, for our simple thing, grab a white. Let's grab a different brush, another gnarly looking one. Just grab one with some random dots in it. Dunk, 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 dunk. Just add a little bit of white to it here and there, so it almost kind of looks like a granite or a sedimentary rock. Now you could leave it like this, and it would be this if you want to consider it detailed. Now I like to go into filters here. Come down to blur. Now I usually use Gaussian blur. Now I don't exactly know what it actually does or what the proper term of it is, but you can see a little preview of it here and change some settings here if you like, and that'll kind of smudge it all around. We could even grab it again, maybe do it maybe a little less this time. Let's see what that looks like. That kind of smears it around a little bit. That's not too bad. You could even do like a motion blur. That's nice. And that kind of looks like a smudge or a smear, like that. Yeah, I kind of mix it in well together. Let's go ahead and leave that. It's not full solid, but it's not quite noisy either. So then what you're going to do is you're going to come down to Save As. Now I like to keep the a GIMP version of the file, especially of maps later down the road, but even of the patterns and stuff, just in case I want to come in and change it, or I want to make a copy of it, or say I want a darker rock, for for another map. Maybe it's in a landscape that's full of obsidian and brimstone. So instead of creating an whole entire new little pattern, all I got to do is come in here and change the colors around a little bit. Just saves you a step later. So we're going to go ahead and in our tutorial folder, which I'll bring this over so you can actually see, in here, we're going to call this rock pattern. Now again, notice now you can actually see it. The XCF right there. See that right up top? Right there? That's the GIMP format. So we're going to call that rock pattern and save that. So now it says it up here. Now to make it a pattern, you're going to want to go into File, Export As. Now it's going to keep the rock pattern name, but over here on All Export Images right here, click that, and in this long list right here it says see GIF image. Can you guys see that? Yeah. GIMP brush animated, GIMP pattern. That's what you're looking for. It's a .pat. Now it'll save it as a PNG right here, but you could come up here and do this and just change it to pat. Now we don't exactly want this in the folder with all the other ones, so we're going to click this create folder button and go patterns like this, and it'll create a patterns folder for us. Go ahead and export it, and it'll ask you for a description, so we're going to go for rock pattern like that, hit export, and boom, we're done with this one. That's it. Now if you want to get really fancy with it, which we can, we're going to save a little bit of space on your computer. We're going to hit save as. We're still in this one right here. We already saved it as rock pattern like this, but now let's call it map patterns like that, right? Hit save like that. So now, see, remember how I always leave this background layer alone? Ciao. We're back at a clean slate, and we already have all our brushes and stuff. We already know what we're doing. We keep on going. So now let's work on some water. So we're going to need a nice blue. Now, this is where you have a choice. You could go for a dark blue or more of a lighter blue. I tend to go for a lighter blue because you need to just know it's water. It doesn't matter if it's dark blue, light blue. You just need to know that it's water. And if it's a real dark blue, it's going to suck your ink out of your printer in a heartbeat. So again, let's start with kind of a light blue like this. Create a new layer, and we'll call this water 1. Because we may come back as we create maps throughout this series and make some more patterns. So we might as well go ahead and number them as well. So make sure we're on the water pattern, grab our fill bucket, make sure we're on full ground or foreground, and ship up. Oh, it didn't save our color that we did. Okay, there we go. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, we're having problems. Let's get our color back. Uh-oh. We're not doing anything. What happened? Okay. We're good to go. We got to make sure we're back on the water one. Ended up, I was clicked on the wrong thing, but that's okay. We got to figure it out. Grab our fill bucket. Boom. We have water. Now again, you can leave it directly as a solid color. We can mess with it a little bit. Let's go ahead and mess with it a little bit. Now we're already on that kind of funky dot brush. Let's see if there's another heavier one. There is. Let's grab that. And then we're going to go ahead and change this back to white. And just put a little bit of white in it. Just to kind of in a little bit of a wave kind of motion like that maybe. Add a little bit in there. And then we're going to go ahead and play with it with our filters again. So let's see what the Gaussian blur looks like. Let's bring that up a little bit. We can kind of see it in the preview. It's a little small, but we can kind of see it. Oh, don't want to go too high. Let's go with that. See what that looks like. That's a nice little smear. And then we'll go ahead and do a motion blur as well. Now for that, we can actually do linear, radial, so it'll come out of the middle. or a zoom. So we can come out here and let's do linear and see, you can see it stretching. See how it's stretching like that? If you look on the preview, as we go back down, it's coming back together. And we can even change the angle of it like that. So it's heading off that way instead. So that's up to you, of course. Let's go ahead and do that one. It kind of smears it nice like that. I like that. So all we got to do is save, because we already saved as, right? So save, and then we're going to go back down to export as. See, we don't want to export to rock pattern.pat. We don't want that. We want a new export. So there we go. We're going to go ahead and do water pattern like that. Just like that, it's already on .pat. We're already in the correct folder, and export, just like that. Oh, and we messed up the description, but that's okay. It's not going to hurt nobody's feelings then. So now let's go ahead and we'll turn this off again, and we'll start on the grass. Now grass, again, same general concept, but I'm going to go ahead and walk you through it. So make sure we create a new layer. We'll call it grass 1, like that, because we may come back and make it more dead grass or burnt grass, depending on what our needs are later down the road. So if we want grass, we're going to need a green. Now we're probably going to go for a darker green, just because the light green is kind of obtrusive. So we're going to do that. Go ahead and fill in our square once again. Now for this, we probably don't want to go with a white. We probably want to go with more of either a darker green or a black. So you can actually come up here, see right here where it's got the V? You can come up here and change it, and the green itself will just get darker like that. So we'll grab a darker green, go back to our brush, and let's do a couple different colors. So let's grab that one brush with just a couple dots on it, and we'll put a little bit of darker green in it. Just kind of smeared in a little bit, maybe a little darker in some areas like that. Because, we're not going to go in and draw each blade of grass. That would be silly. But we're going to do that. Now, to make it a little more interesting, let's go back to our color and bring that darkness down even farther. Maybe even closer to black. Yeah, a nice forest green or hunter green. And then we're going to grab our other brush just for something different. Let's grab a different brush. Let's grab this one. And we're just going to plop a little bit of darker on top like this. Now again, this won't have to be perfect because it's going to be repeated quite a bit. So again, we go back to our Gaussian blur, which will smooth everything out a little bit. We could even go a little bit farther with it like that. No, not so much. That was a little much. Now again, this is just the way that I do it. There we go. That's a little better. I don't even think that needs the motion blur. I think that might be okay just the way it is. Let's do that. And if there's other ways, there's hundreds of other YouTubers, as much as I would hate to recommend somebody else. But, there is other YouTubers out there that will show you how to do these and things like this if you want to do such things. But, grasspattern.pat, we're in the correct folder, hit export like that, and we'll actually, remember this one, we'll do this, grass pattern, since we missed a description on the other one. So now, here's the kicker. You need to go to File, nope, not File, Edit, Edit, the second one. Go down to Preferences. Did you see that? It was Preferences. Now you're going to have the window pop like this. You're going to go down the folders like this. Scroll down until you see a folder. Where is it at? Patterns. There you are. Now, it's going to want right in here. This is where you got to add it. See, I got my other one. Big Guide, Desktop, D&D, D&D Maps, again, Patterns. That's where that one's at. We have our own folder. So we need to add a new one. So we're going to go ahead and go find it. I got all kinds of stuff in here. In the tutorial like that, and patterns. That's the folder we're looking for. That's it. Tutorial patterns, go ahead and hit OK like that. Now, our patterns aren't going to show up yet. They're not quite there yet. We have to close out these and restart it. But we can try right here on the patterns. When you see that little arrow that I hit right here, I'm going to hit that patterns menu and you can hit refresh, but it doesn't always work that way. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, get rid of this, bring it back up and see if we have our patterns in there. And as you can see, or maybe see with my webcam in the way, our 3 new patterns are right here. I just had to close it down and restart it. So that worked out pretty good. So now we're on to brushes. So if you click on either the pencil tool or the paintbrush tool over here on the side there, it'll bring up this brush menu. Now, for what you want to actually start drawing walls and things, you're going to want a hard brush. So that's this guy right here. See how it's not fuzzy like the other ones? You're definitely going to want a hard brush. Now, as in for size, as you can see, that's pretty big compared to our grid back there. So we're going to want to bring it down to about 6. That's what I use. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can see that. So bring it down to about 6. Now, we're going to want to turn our grid off and go View, Show Grid. As you can see, we got to fix it again. So go to Image, Configure Grid, and make sure that this grid matches our grid, which is 64 pixels with no offset. And that will match our grid. See how you can't tell the difference? Just a little darker. Yeah. So make sure our grid's off. Now, when you go to start to draw walls and stuff, you're going to have to, this is where all the decisions start coming into play. Because you can sit here and draw walls all day and just sit here and, go this, but you're going to mess up the grid layer. So at first thing you need to do is make a new layer. So new layer, and I usually call this floor or floor. And you definitely want transparency, not white, so on and so forth. And now we have a new layer, and that's the one we're going to want to draw on. Now you have a choice. If you're doing straight, hallways, you're going to want to use the actual grid. So you're going to want to view, snap to grid. If you guys didn't see that, it's under view, snap to grid right there. And then now every time you're close, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see it a little better. Now every time you're close, it'll snap to one of the intersections like that. Now for the straight ones, you're better off with the pencil tool. That's what you end up using. And then if you click, see how it made a little dot right there? Hold down the shift key and it'll give you this line deal-a-bobber here. And that's how you can start your lines. And it keeps going from where you ended off at, as you can see, like that. But we're not quite to that point yet. Now, or at this point, you're going to want 2 sizes. You're going to want a main wall brush and a more of a smaller brush to signify, say, beaches, secret areas, things like that. Something you don't want quite the full solid because you're trying to create a barrier without creating a wall. Not necessarily a barrier for the players, but a barrier for, say, colors or edges of things or so on and so forth. Edges of water, stuff like that. But, so we got that. So if we're going to do that, so usually 6 is I use as a main wall thickness. I usually go down to 3 for the little side ones. So we know our numbers now. Our brush sizes are 6 and 3. That's what we need. So 6 for our main wall, 3 for side things, which we'll get into an example of here in a minute. So now we're to the point where we could start drawing a map if we really wanted to. We have our patterns. We have our brushes figured out. Now we could start. But now we have to ask ourselves, what kind of map do we want to draw? It's a good question. This is why we make several sizes of the masters. So if we decide to just do, say, a room, say a single room in an inn, we're gonna need a map a lot smaller than this. There's no point in wasting all that much space. If we're doing the entire inn, we may even need a map or a template bigger than this, depending on how big the inn is. If it's an inn in a village, a smaller village, probably not that big. Or just a hole in the wall cantina if you're doing more sci-fi. You're probably not going to need a template this big. You know, but if you're doing a big one, like say a main city tavern, you got to start thinking about buildings and areas because the same general rules apply. If you're going to have a house, we'll just use a house as an example, a single one bedroom house, right? Think about every one bedroom house you've been in. There's a kitchen, a bathroom, and a bedroom. That's the most basic of a single bedroom house. And that's not even counting probably a living room of some sort, maybe a basement, depending on what state you're in, and if they have basements. If you're in Texas, you wouldn't have basements. If you're in a floodplain, you wouldn't have basements. But if you're in the middle of an area that has stronger weather, then you're probably going to have basements. Now, these are all the questions you have to start asking yourself when you start trying to decide what kind of map you want to draw. Now, I've been known to just create random maps. I've gone on here, I've sat it down with some graph paper and just created some random maps. And those are great to have. It's kind of the whole point of doing this tutorial. Because if you could get in the habit of just, you don't have to go too crazy with it, but, create a map a week or something, or a map a month. Put it in a folder. So that way, if you need it, if you're in the middle of a game and you're all this nice big old huge planned area that you have planned out for your players, but they go this way. They ignore all the stuff you already planned for. They want to go look in the inn. They want to go look in this shed. They want to go figure out what's in that mill. Now you're in a pickle. You don't have a map to where they want to go, but you might. That's the one great thing about having these random maps that you create is, maybe you might have a mill or a mansion or a tunnel or something that you may be able to, not necessarily specifically for this campaign and this situation, but something that you can use for this situation. If they want to go to the inn and they start a bar fight, you're going to need a map of a random inn. Hence why I have a few pocket folders of random maps because I could just go in. All right, here's a tavern. Close enough. It gives me a room and gives me an area that I could draw on our mat or at least describe it's 15 feet by 20 feet, whatever, what have you. That's why it's good to have these random maps because the whole point of when you're in the middle of that situation, you don't want to waste too much time because if it's to the point where, oh, I need a map right now, well, let me look on Google. Well, that can take you 20 minutes, 30 minutes before you even get a map that will work for this current situation. I'm not saying that looking through a folder is so much better, but at least you might have a general idea, especially if you made them. If you followed, say, this tutorial series and you went, you know what? A couple weeks ago, I made a tavern map. I know where that's at. Hold on. It's going to be a lot quicker, and it's only going to be a minute or so that your character or that your players are sitting there going and wasting time. Hence why making random maps is a good idea. Now, bear in mind, if you know where your campaign is going, if you know what you need or have a general idea of what you need, you can make some of these maps to begin with in preparation for the next session. If you know the town that they're in has a mill and a tavern, have one of those maps ready. One of each, just in case. Depending on where they go. And that's what, again, helps with this tutorial to have. So now we need to decide what we want to build. And you know what? I haven't built, drawn out a mill in a long time. that might not be a bad first starter for our little map tutorial here. And then we'll move on to some bigger maps because you want to start off kind of small. So now so now that we've decided what we want to build, now we have to think about what's in it. So a mill. Now we have a couple choices. You have a windmill or like a water mill. Water mill would be on the side of a river. Now we made that nice fancy water texture. It probably would be a nice idea to make a water mill or a river mill, however you want to put it. That would be nice to do. So we know for sure if we chose a water mill, now we know we're going to need some kind of water source. That being a river or a waterfall or what have you. So now we know what kind of mill we're making. Now generally, you not everybody needs to know just generally what's in a building. What's the difference between a windmill and a river mill? Not everyone's going to know that. But that would take 5 minutes on Google while you're not in the middle of a game session to do so. So, water mill. So we know we need a river, right? So let's make sure our brush is on 6. We're on a hard brush. We're on the floor texture. Let's draw us a river. So what I end up doing is I start off, especially for if I'm, we're going to try to take up a good chunk of this space with this water mill because we're going to, I've already decided in my head, I'm already trying to build the map in my head. Let's give it a little bit of an outside and then we'll do the inside as well. We don't have to go crazy, but a little bit of the outside, a little bit of the inside. Okay, so we need a river. That's easy enough. So you can kind of start off now for this. For a river, that's going to be more organic. So let's go ahead and turn off Snap to Grid. And I kind of want to start in this corner here. I tend to pick a corner to kind of start in. Now, we don't have Snap to Grid on. We're good. So now we're on this one right here. We could technically just start going. Now, when you're going to go off to the side of the map, make sure to go clean off with your stroke like that. And it's always better to do smaller strokes, just like in regular art, just like regular drawing. Smaller strokes, easier to erase. If you do a big old huge line going across the whole map and you mess up at the end of it, you hit Control Z, the whole thing's gone. Hence why I started kind of here and went off the map. And that also allows us to do our patterns and stuff easier because we're going to use the magic wand to select it. So now we have a chunk of our river. So now we're going to just continue it on like that. Try to keep the lines a little better. Now this is organic, so we're going to kind of come around the corner. Maybe the river's going around the corner. And then we're just going to go ahead and go off the map again. Now, is this a wide river or kind of more of a spring? This should probably be a smaller river. Or not necessarily a river, but a stream. Because generally for river or water mills, what they would do is off a big river is they would pull off just a little bit, make just enough of a ditch to get a little bit of a stream coming off to be able to run the wheel without overloading it with the entire river. So we're probably going to go for more of a skinnier river. So let's start here and kind of go back off the map like that. And then we'll make our organic looking line. Now this doesn't have to be perfect. There's no exact science to making organic lines. There's really not. Now, you're probably asking, well, hey, that's not matching up with the grid. It's not. And because normal landscape does not match up with the grid. Hallways do. As human beings or even sentient beings, we tend to be pretty geometric about our hallways in our rooms, which is why making maps on graph paper is okay and doable. That we need it for the mechanics of the game. But regular rivers, maybe paths, edges of mountains, they don't have to be on the grid. It's okay to not be on the grid. So what we're going to do from here, now that we're off to the side here, we're going to create another layer like this, and we're going to call it water. Like that. But we got to go back on floor, get our magic wand. Now, if you've dealt with computers at all and messed with Paint or Photoshop or any of the image editing program, you know what the magic wand does. You click it, and you click in the area that you are trying to select. Oop. So we have that area now selected. But we don't want to color it on our floor layer. We want to color it on our water layer. See how the selection stays right there? That's what we need. So we go over to our fill bucket right here. Now we're going to go down over here. See where I've been, where I've been talking about the foreground color and stuff like that. We're going to go down the pattern. And actually, the water is already selected. So see how it's got the little circle with the line through it? And here it's got the little stamp looking thing. That means you're allowed to do it. Go ahead and chipunk. Now we got our water in. Now to get rid of the selection, just come up here to select and hit none. Like that. And boom. We can go back to our floor layer. Now we have some water on our map. And I went ahead and zoomed back out so we could get a better picture of how much this river is taking up our map. We still got plenty of room to play with over here. And I think that water pattern came out really nice. It almost kind of looks like little waves, doesn't it? It does. So now we're going to start our actual water mill. Now we have a choice. We can take our little stream for the water mill off of this river we just made, or we could have the water going directly from this one. Let's go ahead and get it directly off of this one. And what we're going to do, or how we're going to do it, we're going to go ahead and zoom back in on this corner here, just like that. And we're going to take our pencil tool. Make sure we're on 6. Let's go ahead and do this next chunk on 3. Now, we got to make sure we're back on the floor, like this. Now, this might change a few things. We may have to go back and do some shenanigans, but that's okay. Now, think about a big water wheel. If you've seen them, they're pretty big. So, now, generally, in tabletop games, each square represents 5 feet. Generally. Not all games work that way. Sometimes they're 10 feet. Sometimes they represent 20 feet. And it just depends on how zoomed out you want to be. But for the, most of the time they count for 5 feet. So we want, for one, we want to go back to view and go snap to grid. Because now we're starting some of our geometric stuff. So let's go ahead and put it in right in our flat spot right here. Because that seems to be the best to be able to grab that river. I would say about 15 feet. So we make sure we're on that. Make sure we're on that. Select is off. Good. Oh, it's doing some funky stuff again. Oh, you know why we can't see it? It's another good lesson. See how our water layer is above our floor layer? Well, let's put it down a little bit. See, we got all these little marks on here now. Oh, see, we messed it up. Let's go ahead and go back. See where it says select none, fuzzy select, bucket select. Let's go back to that. There we go. See, all you had to do is go back up to this yellow arrow, click that, and you have all the different things that you're able to scroll up, pass some screw ups, and select which one you want to be on. Let's go back to the layer. Now let's go ahead and move this underneath the floor. Now it makes more sense. So now we should be able to click. See, we got our little line tool. Let's go ahead and do this right here. Now that gives us a box. Now I did it with the 3-point brush, not the 6-point brush, because it kind of counts as something different. Now for this right here, what we need to do is we need to get the water out of it. Did I just put that on the water? I did. See, I screwed up again. Got to make sure you're on that floor layer. Like that. There we go. We're on the floor layer. So now we need to select that little bit of space, just like that. Go on the water layer, and then we're going to go ahead and erase it. Now we can't just, magic wand it away. Well, we got 2 choices. Since it's selected and we're on the water one, we could just go delete. Like that. Just hit the delete key right on the keyboard, and it'll get rid of the water pattern in that area. Or we could come over to this old pink eraser and erase it that way too. Either way works. As long as the job gets done, that's the important part. So now we're going to kind of go towards the middle here. Oh, we got to turn off our selection. Make sure we're on the floor layer. Come over here. And we're going to have to try to get it as straight as possible. We don't have to be exact, but try to get it kind of straight. Yeah, see, I messed up. But I'm kind of a perfectionist to a point. Driving me nuts. Let's zoom in a little further, shall we? There we go. That was driving me nuts. There we go. Now we can actually see the little square. So what I'm doing here is the actual crankshaft. Now, if you know anything about mechanics, for something like this, you would need a crankshaft. And basically what that is the actual post or cylinder that turns with the mechanical object. And that's what we went for here, because we have to connect the water wheel. Oops, I'm knocking stuff over on my desk here. We have to connect the water wheel to the actual mechanics on the inside of the building. But now we can start doing some of our walls. So let's go ahead and zoom out. Now this right here is our magnifying glass. If you click with it on the little plus sign, it'll zoom in, hit Control, sorry, the far left Control, it will zoom out like this. So let's get us some more playroom here. Go back to our pencil tool. Let's go up to 6. And now we'll start making the side of our mill. Now remember, 5 foot per square. So we're going to need a little bit of room inside. So let's go ahead and start over here. Kind of give it a little bit of room like that. And we're going to come up here. Now bear in mind that these mills usually ran some kind of mechanism. That's the whole point of it, is they're trying to get the crankshaft to turn so they could turn something else. In a windmill, they generally use it to grind up wheat into flour, and a river mill was usually used in a sawmill application. So we're going to have to put that on as well. Now, the general mechanism in here wouldn't be that big, so we could go ahead and just make it so what, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 feet ought to be good enough. Now, for a door, what I usually do is I usually leave a space. So we'll stop there. Click a new spot here on this one, and then come back over here. Now that's an extremely simple square mill. But, again, doesn't have to be all that exciting yet. Because this is just the mill. This is just the room that holds the mechanisms for inside here, which we'll come back and do. So let's go ahead and scroll up, because now, connected to that, we have to put the sawmill. Because if it's not connected, then we don't get the power from the actual river. So let's go ahead. Now, these sawmills were pretty long. If you've ever played Skyrim, you've seen the one that I'm thinking about. So we're going to go ahead and click here in this corner, come all the way out to here, like this, right here. Now, I'm going to come down to here, but leave a 10-foot chunk right here, or 2 blocks. And we're going to stop right there, because we're going to come back out like this, come to the corner of the building, click there, come out here like that. Because what I'm going to do is create some stairs to symbolize that the sawmill itself is up a floor. Because you would have this building be taller, not necessarily have 2 floors, but be taller so the mechanism could get up to the saw. And you would have to get to the top of the saw to cut a log, So there we go. Now for stairs, I'll usually go back to a 3-point brush. Start in this corner here, like this. And just cross it. Now if you want to go ahead and we can get rid of the grid for a minute, just so we can see more of what we're doing. I want to zoom in right on this stairwell, just so we can see it. And we still got snap to grid on. That's fine. So we're going to need one at the top of the stairs right here. Still doesn't quite look like stairs. So let's look for that other one. And we could even turn on our grid real quick to see where it's about at. So it's about right there. We're going to put one in the next square spot. So now it just kind of looks like funkiness. So then I try to add a couple more in between. So put one here, put one about here. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. It's just stairs. Like this. Now, like electronics, blueprints, I don't like that. I don't like that. Ew. Breaking stuff. Screw it. There's certain symbols that go on these things that tend to represent stuff. And one of that thing is for stairs. Because you might be stairs, might be a roof, might be something along those lines. So let's go ahead and turn our grid back on so we can see what we're looking at. And we're going to come right here to the bottom of the stairs, leave our 3 brush on, and to symbolize the stairs, all we're going to do is click, come up to about here, like this, come back, and go down again. Now, an arrow one way would symbolize these are the stairs up, and you can only go up. But we want to have them go down too. So we could draw this again, or we could not necessarily cheat a little, but cheat a little. Go ahead and select. I just used a rectangle select tool. Went around our arrow. Control C, Control V. Now this will create this temporary layer right here. And all we need to do is right click it and go to new layer. Right? So now we have a copy of this. Now we have these little arrow tools. That's the move tool. So we're going to want to move this over to here. Right? But now it's facing the wrong way. So make sure we're on the right layer. We are. And the rotate tool is right here. Just click on that little area. We'll bring this over so we can actually see it. Now these are just regular angles. So if you go all the way over to 180, it's going to flip around just like that. Now to add it to our floor layer, that's where it needs to go, right? So click on that, make sure we got the right layer. Click on that, make sure we got the right layer. Right click on the layer you want to merge into the one below it and go merge down, just like that. So now our second arrow is part of our floor layer, which is exactly what we want. And that symbolizes an up and down capability of those stairs. And that works pretty good. So we're almost getting close up to the top of the map here. So we're actually filling up a chunk of this map. And we haven't even done the miller's actually house. Now we have a choice. We could attach his house to the mill itself, which probably would not happen because you'd have these big logs roaming around. You wouldn't want necessarily having a log go through the front window of a mill's house. A miller would be smarter than that. So let's go back and do this mechanism in here. Now we don't have to be perfect on what it is, but we know a couple gears are probably involved. So let's go ahead and continue. Let's zoom in here. Woo, that's a little too much. There we go. I want to be able to see a good chunk of this room at a time. Go back to our pencil and now go into the end of our crankshaft right here. And just bring this inside. Just like that. Now again, it doesn't have to be straight, but I'm going to try to get it straight as much as possible. It's bugging me. Oh well. Doesn't have to be perfect. And we'll bring that crankshaft in like that. Because this is trying to show that the players can't go through it. That's the whole point of this, is turning a blank page into a schematic of walls. So now I'm going to go ahead and bring up our brush up to 6. And we're going to do kind of a machine type thing. So I'm going to go ahead and select here, go up to here, and come around. Just like that. We're going to this will represent our machine per se. So now we get to use our other pattern. So we need to make a new layer. It doesn't matter which one you click on, just right click. And we're going to call this solids. Now this basically implies that you can't get through it. So we need to go back to floor, use our magic wand tool, get this square selected here, move over to our solids, grab our bucket tool once again, but click on this pattern, which is our rock and solids one, and go ahead and fill it in like that. And then again, that symbolizes something the players cannot pass through. or climb over retrospectively. Hence why we did not put the solid texture in this crankshaft right here. Because a crankshaft you could duck under, dive over, climb over, something along those lines. Now, you're probably wondering, how come we don't put a door on it? Like I said earlier, I leave that to the user's imagination. They want a door, they want it kicked in, that's all up to them. Same thing with other stuff like crates and other things. We don't have to get too specific because you may have to change the map for each situation you need to use it in. Because I could print out 7 copies of this map and use it in 7 different situations, depending on what I put in it. But we do need to add the saw blade onto the mill. So let's go back to our pencil tool. Let's go back to the 3, because you could hop over a saw blade. I just wouldn't recommend it. And what we're going to do is just do that. Now, it probably wouldn't be no 15-foot blade, but it'd be a pretty big blade because it'd have to cut big logs. So let's go ahead and do that. We're on the floor layer. Everything's right. All right. Uh-oh, it's not working again. It would help if I close the selection off. That I needed a break anyway. So let's get our saw blade in. Now you can't really see it. So let's go ahead and let's just expand it a little bit. So we're going to zoom in so we can get a better idea. Go back to our pencil tool, go to here, and just create a little bit of thickness just so we can see it even when the grid is on. Zoom back out. There we go. So now we have our saw blade. And I would not suggest stepping in it, for sure. So now if you want to add, like, say, a railing or something along those lines, you could do so as well. But I think we're going to stop there for right now. This has been going on for quite a while. We're going to go ahead and stop right here and finish up our little map next time when we talk about the miller's house. Because house is a little more different. You have to think about it a little bit more. But this episode showed how the brushes work and how we can actually start drawing a map. So we made a good chunk of progress. So if you like what we're doing, please leave a like. Tell all your D&D buddies to get over here and start making some maps. Again, I'm Big Guy. And let's make us some maps. And we're going to do some other stuff too on this channel as well. We're going to look at some other resources. We're going to build us a miller's house next time. Go ahead and subscribe if you feel like you want to have it. And there's actually a little bell right next to the subscribe button that will show you whenever a new video pops out. So have a good one, guys. I will see you next time, and happy gaming.